Whoops. It's very secure despite it falling off right there. Hey, it's Nate with 4x4, and in this video we're going to go over some of the stuff that I have been asked about the most, which is what's going on with my build out? What does it look like? How does it work? How is it put together? So we're going to take a full walk through it here, and stay tuned. So let's step in. First thing that you'll notice is that the entryway is designed to bring you around towards the back and into the kitchen. This entire build out is based off of original OEM or OEM adjacent build that Mitsubishi worked on with Rymo. Rymo is a German company. They, to this day, make camper conversions for all sorts of cars, both European and Japanese, like the late model Hiaces from Toyota. But stepping back a little bit, as we get back out to here, we can see I've got this door, and pulling this open, the power supply. So I can turn on and off and cut off the charging system to the entire rear end. So if this is off, the back's not even going to charge, but once I turn it on, the system will. I usually modulate this a little bit just so that we can not constantly be running the alternator on 3 batteries, since this is the Chamonix edition. It does have 2 batteries up front, but I'll turn it on maybe like a week before I go on a trip or something. That way I'll start to charge up the house battery, which we'll get to in a second. That's built as part of this engine hump cover right here, and this is really the key to the entire system. The way that this really works is by having the kitchen in the back, it's going to push everything else forward. And so because of that, you need to create a little bit more sleeping area, and that sleeping area comes from really utilizing every square inch behind the driver and passenger seat. So if we pull this up a little bit, we can see all I've done is created a shelf that levels out the distance from the engine hump itself and then gives us about 6 inches of extra space. This does not interfere with the engine opening up in any way. If you need to access the engine, all you do is you pull this cover or this cushion aside, you're free to go. This is really the only thing that's going to happen. But even so, it's built in such a way that it's, it's flexible enough in the middle there that you could open the engine cover and not even have to worry about it. And then this is held up entirely by shelf brackets. So you've got the OEM seat holes in there. Those are going to let you just bring this up a little bit. So these bolts are designed to hold in, the original bench chair. And what I've done, if you were to pull this carpet back, underneath here is a pretty standard shelf bracket. I picked it up at Home Depot. It's pretty beefy. It's designed to support like up to 500 pounds or something, right? And so that just gets bolted into this hole right here, which is attached to the frame. And then it runs this way and comes up behind this. And there are 2 of them. So there's one right here, and then there's one further back actually hidden under this bench. And those support this entire system. And they do a really good job of it too. That's important, not just for the seating, but because this supports part of the bed platform as well. So you got this cleat right here. You've got one right here. You've got the tops of these drawers. You've got another cleat on this side then too. And that is what creates and fills in this gap. And we'll get to that in a little bit. The only other thing that I do want to call out outside here, fire extinguisher. Pretty simple setup. It's an automotive fire extinguisher. Not entirely sure what that means, other than it's a little bit smaller. I probably overpaid for it because it's automotive specific, but I think it handles grease fire and chemical fires a little bit better than a standard fire extinguisher. So we'll cross our fingers and hope that it never comes to that. It's got a nice little convenient testing thing on the top, so I can still make sure it's pressurized. But other than that, there's nothing too crazy about it. I set it here because I wanted it accessible primarily when I'm in the back if I'm cooking something, but also not too far out of the way so that if, heaven forbid, something happens up front, I can still go and grab it and be okay. The thing that I want to make sure I mention here is that I am kind of halfway in completely redesigning this. So if we look at this side of the build over here, you can see there are these drawers. This is what I would call V1. That's going away. We're switching over to what's on this side, which is really V2. We'll talk about V1 for a second. So V1 uses drawers. They just pull out. They're pretty simple. It's a standard box drawer design. I've got my Mitsubishi Delica 50th anniversary Pendleton blanket in there. They hold quite a bit. They're about 12 inches tall, 14 inches wide, and 20 inches deep, give or take. So about 2 cubic feet of space. Like I mentioned, these top platform pieces support the bed. They're held in by some pretty heavy duty screws and quite a few of them. A lot of this is honestly overbuilt, but I'd rather it be overbuilt and add a little bit of weight than be in the middle of sleeping and it fall apart on me or something. And then they've got just these little pretty basic clasps you can see right here, and those will allow it to shut and stay shut. So if we lock it, you can hear it lock there. To pull them out, they've just got simple finger holes. Works pretty well. Not the most elegant solution, but I like it. It's a nice mix of kind of modern, adjacent, or period correct. Period correct is what I was really going for here. I wanted this to look like it came from the factory this way. That was one of the most important things to me. And so on this side, you've got 2 drawers. Another one, exactly the same in terms of size and specs and everything. And then over here, this is actually more of a cabinet door. And the reason why is because if we look way in there, you can see there's the wheel well. We're going to ignore that pretty rough cut in the back. But because of the wheel well, if I were to build a drawer on this one, it would have been basically unusable. So went with, and you can see, this is part of why I'm switching it as well, is that these don't always work super great, but that's how it was set up. And that was mirrored roughly with one pull-out drawer and the cabinet door on this side. And so this was V1. These cushions are completely they're not locked in or anything. So when the bed does pull out, that's how it works. You can see it creates quite a bit of room, even with just this one side. So when I'm sleeping, if it's just me, usually I'll just do the one side and be good with it. If my partner's in here, we'll make the whole thing into a bed. It turns into about a queen bed size. Part of what I've done more recently is add this table system, and I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. The first is it's nice to have a table, especially for eating and stuff like that. But the other part is that these are the platforms that make up the bed. And so with that in mind, I wanted a way to really have these out of the way as much as possible. Earlier designs had them more integrated, folding and stuff like that, and it ended up proving to be just too much work. So what I did was I made them smaller and a little bit more modular, and with that, I needed a place to put them all. So getting this one, which is the largest of them and the most dimensionally out of whack compared to the others, out of storage, and to make it usable but still make it sit in the bed platform, super helpful. So you can see this table setup. It's really nice. It's an off-the-shelf application made by Lagoon, Lagun. It's got 360 degrees of rotation, so we can move it all over. Oops, smack the cup holders that are built into it. And it also, if you look down here, you've got another latch that'll allow the whole thing to move up and down. It stores away pretty well, as you can see there. And then it just uses, pretty simple clamps. These pivot and move, so you can, tighten them and untighten them as needed, and then get them kind of out of the way so that you don't have it randomly sticking up like that where you're going to hit it. Converting that into a bed though, and this is going to be a little bit awkward because I'm doing this one-handed, but yep. Whoop. Pull this out. You can see the cup holders popped out. They're not permanently affixed yet, but that's how that would slide in. And the whole arm from the table system does come out really easily, but doing this one-handed, it's not going to happen right now. So, but you can see that's how the bed platform works. And then I'll use this as well as like a prep area. If I'm standing outside of the van, I've got the ARB awning and the ARB room. So, if I need a little bit of extra prep surface while I'm outside, can also use this, set a stove on it, that sort of thing. Which is pretty nice. So we'll just set this out of the way there. Step a little bit further in. So let's talk about version 2 of the build. This has been something that's been on my mind for a while, and the biggest thing that I've noticed with having the drawers is the lack of like true usable space. They store a lot, but they only store stuff within the dimensions that the drawers allow. So I got rid of the drawers completely. We'll pull these out of the way here. Set them aside. You can see there it is. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. There's a double offset piano hinge or double offset hinge in the back there. So that allows me to really have this kind of tucked out of the way. I need to put a handle on this. I just built this last weekend. So, but you can see now it pops up and there's a whole bunch more room in there. I've got extra cushions and kind of bedding in there right now. But eventually the goal is to put like a diesel heater in here. And you can see the whole thing is storage. It's very, very accessible. Really a more useful setup than the drawer system was. Which I'm really happy with. And then if we look towards the back, this is really the last component, and this is the kind of kitchen area itself. And this is one piece, for better or worse. I think if I were to do this again, I would probably make it two pieces with the closet on one side and then the kitchen on the other, just so that it's a little bit easier to take out if I ever needed to do so. So I'm really cautious about power usage. You saw the primary power shutoff at the start of the video. I also have individual switches back here. Top one is going to turn on this USB power, tells me how much I've got. This guy is going to turn on the faucet, and then this one is going to allow the light up here to come on, and this is just an auxiliary, you know, LED light that I threw in and wired up just so that I have a little bit of lighting back here. It's a little bit dimmer than the main, you know, dome light that Mitsubishi put in. And it's not connected to the starting battery, right? All of this stuff back here is connected to the house battery, which is really nice. If we open this up, we've then got a little closet. It's got some decent space in there. Another little light. That one's just a tap. I was gonna hardwire that one, but just did not get around to it. And this actually ends up working out really well. A couple of different modes. Same thing. It's got, you know, a latch on it so that it's gonna not rattle around and be pretty secure on me. And then if we look at the kitchen, it's a pretty basic kitchen, I'll be honest. I've got a sink. This is an RV sink. So straightforward enough, you know, got a little drain in the bottom there. SureFlow faucet, which again is a basic faucet setup. This is actually really just a power switch that you turn on and off, and that's gonna activate the 12-volt pump that's underneath, and we'll get to that in a second. These brown plastic accessories are from a company called Selfix, an American Midwest company from like the 1980s. But the color brown was just perfect. And so like if we look up here at my paper towel holder, same brand, and actually back here I've got some coat hooks as well that I hang stuff from when I'm traveling or driving around, you know, blankets and that sort of thing. And the way that these all work is super nice. So they have these pucks, and these pucks were designed to be like glued onto things. But what I ended up doing was just drilling a hole and screwing it into what would normally be the grab handles for the back. Now obviously the grab handles aren't really being used all that much anymore, so I was fine with pulling them out and replacing them with these. So then, whoops, it's very secure despite it falling off right there. I don't know if I'll be able to get this on one-handed. Yeah, I will. But the nice thing is, because they're just on those pucks, you can adjust them to have the right amount of friction associated with it. So if I were to, you know, pull this down and like push the puck out a little bit like that, rotate it that one to the right, now they're just going to be applying a little bit more pressure to these, and that thing's, you know, that's not going anywhere. But it works really well. It just hangs there, chills out. Removable as well if I ever wanted to pull it out, which I really like. I made this as well, which is a half cutting board trivet piece that fits in the sink. The primary purpose of this, as well as this cutting board, which I'll get to in a second, is not actually like cutting or storage. It's as the sun is coming in. I really didn't want this, you know, giant stainless bowl dish reflecting all of that light back up and potentially like scorching the interior or, heaven forbid, something catching on fire. So that's really what this is in here for. It's got just these little feet on the bottom of it, so you just rest there, which is really nice. But then again, it just keeps it from rattling, and it sits in there pretty nicely. This is where the stove normally sits. Right now, obviously it's not there, but this cutout is all built around the Snow Peak IGT or iron grilled table system. What does that mean? Well, the IGT system from Snow Peak is this modular setup of stoves. There's like 4 different stove options. There's cutting boards. There's water dispensers, all sorts of stuff, even like a little sink or waterproof sink thing. And I use that because not only do I have that set up for like camp cooking and that sort of thing, but also just because I wanted to be able to have this be different things. So I didn't want the stove in here all the time. So I have this cutting board, which I actually made. It's a replica of the Snow Peak one, but everything's always a 1/2 inch thick and roughly 10 inches by 14 inches. There's some dimensional stuff that happens that's kind of weird. But this meant that I could very easily pull the stove out, replace it with a cutting board, replace it with any of those other pieces that are in there and not have to worry about it. And so it's nice again because the stoves, they're stainless steel. Same thing, not getting that heat, not getting that reflection. There's a lot of bits and pieces on them, so sometimes they can rattle. With just having this cutting board in here most of the time, don't have to worry about any of that. It's just super simple, super clean. Got to brand it as well, get that on there. And so that's roughly the inside. We're gonna step around to the back really quick here and take a look at the back side of the kitchen and the back side of all that storage. One thing to call out is I've done the mod to reverse the position of the hinges. It's gonna get me a decent amount of height. A little bit of storage off to the left here on the underside of the closet itself. I've thought about putting a door here. The original Mitsubishi design did, but ultimately I decided against it just because it's not needed. And I want to make sure I can access things like behind the taillight here. I'm in the process of carpeting some of this as well, so that's why it's 50-50. And then you can see this big metal bracket here, which is doing a lot of the support work for the closet itself. On the other side, got these curtains, which I really like. These are OEM Delica curtains that I don't remember where I got, but they were sitting in my basement forever, and I figured, hey, let's find a good use for them. They're just on plastic sliders, and what this does is because this kitchen sits up just a little bit higher than the bottom of the glass, people could see in here. And normally there's a big old Yeti cooler right here as my cool storage, but I just wanted to keep prying eyes away. So, having those closed is really, really nice. Just to keep everything hidden. Yeti cooler generally goes here, not there right now. There's some more of those big brackets that are really supporting the bulk of the weight of the kitchen countertop, which is just a particle board and like a melamine or Formica type countertop. It's not the nicest in the world, but it's cheap and lightweight and was really easy to work with. And then on this side, we've got the bulk of the kitchen itself. So I went with Rotopax tanks for both my white and gray water. And the reason I did that is because of how small they are. I was originally gonna go with NATO 5-gallon tanks. They're just too big. It would have reduced all of the space back here. I don't really travel long enough that I need that much water instantly accessible. This storage over here does fit one of those 5-gallon tanks. So what I've done in the past, if I've been gone for a longer time, fill this up, 2 gallons of water. It's pretty good. Put the 5-gallon over here so that I can refill it if if and when it runs out. But again, because it comes out so easily, it's just this simple locking mechanism. It's easy to fill up again too. That is run into let's brighten this up a bit, really basic 12-volt pump. In looking at pumps online, this is like the only one that exists for 12 volt. And it comes in all sorts of different price ranges, but it's all, like if you look at the casting and the molding of it, they're all identical. It is on rubber mounts, so it's not gonna vibrate a whole bunch, but it is loud. I'll warn anyone looking at it that it's very loud. So it's not the kind of thing that I'd be running all the time. That then, just runs up into the backside of the faucet. And then over here, we've got the drain into my gray water tank, pretty basic stuff. And then in here is my house battery. It's pretty small as far as house batteries go. I know a lot of people go with like the 200 amp hour. I don't need it that much to necessitate that big of a battery. So I just went with a 20 amp hour, which is more than enough for what I use. Right now it's hooked up to a battery isolator. So I've got the primary switch, which is all the way over there. Once that's on, that will allow the battery isolator to work and send power to this. The battery isolator though is going to prevent this whole system from draining my starting batteries, which is, again, what I really want. Nothing worse than being stranded. Got a fuse bank built into it as well so that I can add more power. I've got some plans to, you know, put like a cigarette lighter type power source back here and some other little doodads. Inside of here, because this is where like the battery's housed, there's also a pretty big fuse, saving the whole system in case there is like a big power surge up at front. It's gonna keep everything safe back here. Now with the 20 amp hour battery, the only thing that I'll call out is that it's fine to run it and charge it based off of the alternator system, but eventually I will get solar in here. With a 20 amp hour battery, just a single 100 watt panel is going to be more than enough. So I'm not super worried about it. At a high level, that is the build out. I've kind of half destroyed it with, you know, stuff on the ground and walking through this, but I wanted to give you all a full tour of everything I've got going on in the back 3/4 of my van. So hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave any comments below, and be more than happy to answer. I'd be more than happy to talk about it. I've got a very large build thread on the Mitsubishi Delica forum as well. It walks through every single step, all of my learnings, all of my failures, everything that I experienced along the way of actually working on this thing and putting it all together. So thanks for watching. Went a little bit longer than I was expecting to, but appreciate it. Have a good one.